1 out of every 94 Cubans. Think about that number for a second. At the height of Fidel Castro's regime, that was the terrifying ratio of political prisoners to everyday citizens. 75,000 people locked away, many for crimes they hadn't even committed yet. The revolution promised paradise, but instead, it built a bureaucratic meat grinder, a prison system so massive, so ruthless, that over the next 50 years, 500,000 lives would be swallowed behind its walls. To understand how extreme those numbers really are, we have to look at the context. In 1960, the entire federal prison population of the United States, a country of millions, stood at just over 23,000 inmates. Cuba, a tiny island with a fraction of that population, was locking away dissidents at a scale that defied every Cold War norm. Even the most infamous military dictatorships in South America didn't come close. Argentina's junta detained tens of thousands during its dirty war. Chile, under Pinochet, imprisoned around 40,000 people over 17 years. But Cuba? With a population of just 7 million in 1962, it was incarcerating political dissenters at a per capita rate that dwarfed nearly every dictatorship of the era. More than 1 in every 100 adults was facing arrest. It created a total climate of paralysis across the island. But the numbers only established the scale. The cells told a completely different story. Inside those prisons, a specific category of inmate emerged, and the regime came to fear them more than any armed insurgent. They were called the plantados, literally, those who stood firm. These were the prisoners who refused to wear the blue uniform that signaled they accepted being treated as common criminals. They refused forced labor in the cane fields and quarries. They refused the political re-education sessions designed to extract public confessions of ideological error. For this refusal, the state answered with ice-cold determination. Plantados were placed in solitary confinement for stretches that extended not for days or weeks, but for years. Men like Mario Chana de Armas, a former comrade of Castro himself, spent 30 years behind bars, much of it in total isolation. Beatings came in waves, medical care was withheld as leverage. Family visits, the one single connection to the outside world, were canceled as collective punishment. And the sentences themselves were designed to swallow a man's entire life. 15 to 30 years was the standard range for political offenses. A man arrested at 25 for distributing pamphlets could reasonably expect to leave prison in his mid-50s, if he survived at all. The plantados understood this arithmetic perfectly. Their refusal to cooperate was not naive defiance. It was a conscious decision to preserve the one thing the regime could not name and could not confiscate: their fundamental identity as free men. By 1969, the International Committee of the Red Cross dispatched a medical commission to examine the conditions firsthand. What they documented confirmed the worst. Beatings were routine. Punishment cells, windowless, sometimes flooded, sometimes sweltering, were the standard response to disobedience. Denial of medical care was not negligence. It was state policy, applied selectively to break specific prisoners. Within this environment, some inmates reach for the only weapon left to them: their own bodies. The Cuba Archive has documented at least 14 political prisoners who died on hunger strike. Pedro Luis Boitel, a student leader, died in 1972 after 53 days without food. Orlando Zapata Tamayo died in 2010 after 83 days. Human Rights Watch later characterized the conditions as humiliating, oppressive, and despotic. And the trials that delivered these men into prison were a complete sham. Nearly all political hearings were closed to the public. Most lasted less than 1 hour. Defendants were denied counsel of their choosing and confronted with evidence assembled by state security with no obligation to prove it was authentic. The verdict, in nearly every single case, preceded the proceeding. Then came peligrosidad, or dangerousness, a law that permitted authorities to imprison individuals who had committed no crime at all, but who were deemed likely to offend in the future. It functions less like criminal law and more like the pre-crime scenarios of dystopian fiction. A young man with the wrong friends, the wrong reading list, or the wrong refusal to attend a rally could be sentenced to up to 4 years simply because a state functionary decided he might someday act against the revolutionary order. Yet, while this apparatus expanded, another reality unfolded in parallel. Amnesty International acknowledged the paradox openly. Castro's government drastically expanded free healthcare, pushed literacy rates toward universal levels, and built a medical infrastructure that became a regional reference point. It is the ultimate doublethink. The exact same state that taught a peasant child to read also imprisoned her brother for what he might think. In 1979, under intense international pressure, the Cuban government officially admitted to holding approximately 4,500 political prisoners. Independent estimates ran considerably higher, but the admission itself was telling. A regime that publicly acknowledges thousands of political detainees while officially denying the practice of political imprisonment had achieved a terrifying level of control, and the system survived its creator. When Raúl Castro assumed the presidency in 2008, foreign analysts predicted a gradual liberalization. Yet Human Rights Watch documented that the core machinery remained completely intact. Arbitrary detentions continued, sham trials persisted, and the beatings went on with the exact same routine. By 2019, 3 years after Fidel Castro's death, dozens of individuals remained incarcerated on politically motivated charges. The 500,000 figure wasn't just the product of one man's paranoia. It was an institution designed to reproduce itself across generations of leadership. The system had become self-sustaining, operating with a bureaucratic inertia that required no ideological fervor to continue. Only administrative habit and the signatures of those who processed the paperwork. For anyone familiar with the history of authoritarian regimes, these accounts of isolation cells, denied medical care, and choreographed trials carry an uncomfortable familiarity. The mechanics of state terror look identical across ideologies. The apparatus of political imprisonment in Cuba demonstrates how revolutionary ideals, when fused with absolute power, transform into mechanisms of control indistinguishable from the systems they were meant to replace. 500,000 lives passed through those walls. The question that remains is not why it happened in Cuba, but why we keep expecting the next revolution to end differently.